It's showtime.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode, and in today's video I'm going to teach you how to set boundaries and also the importance of setting boundaries. So if that sounds good, let's go.
Listen to me very carefully.
So let me just preface this by saying all of you watching this should be setting boundaries, because if you don't, you will be in for a roller coaster of emotions in your everyday life. Mainly bad emotions, to be quite frank. So to begin, let's first define what a personal boundary is. And for this definition, we're going to use Wikipedia because I think it gives a very solid working definition. Okay, so personal boundaries are guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for other people to behave towards them. They also describe how the person who sets the boundaries will respond if someone crosses those boundaries. They are built out of a mix of conclusions, beliefs, opinions, attitudes, past experiences, and social learning. This concept or life skill has been widely referenced in self-help books and used in counseling professions since the mid-1980s. It's also worth mentioning that boundaries can come in many forms, such as physical, mental, psychological, and spiritual. Alright, so now that we've got a working definition of what a personal boundary is, let's look at the importance of these personal boundaries and why you need to have them, and what will happen if you don't set these boundaries and put them in place. Number 1, people will disrespect you. When someone senses that you don't have any boundaries, they will inherently push your boundaries or push you in ways they wouldn't do if they were dealing with someone who did have boundaries. Essentially, they can sense that you don't have any respect for yourself because a respectable person sets boundaries, and thus, as a result, they will disrespect you. Next, a lot of people will take advantage of you because essentially they can see you will go along with anything they say or anything they do. Next, if you don't have any boundaries set, you'll get a lot of passive-aggressive comments or snarky remarks from the a-holes of the world. In some cases, you might even get physically bullied. Now, bullying is more in school or high school, and passive-aggressiveness is more in the working environment, but they're both the result of not setting boundaries. And finally, and probably the most important aspect of setting boundaries, is because if you don't set these boundaries, you will suffer mental and emotional abuse. Not to mention, your self-esteem will take a massive hit as well. Okay? Because every time you seriously, and I mean seriously, compromise your boundaries, or you do something to disrespect yourself, your self-esteem gets lowered. Not only that, but as we just mentioned, you suffer mental and emotional distress. And if this happens over a long period of time, it can cause some very, very serious issues. Okay? So the next obvious question is, how do you create and define these boundaries? Now, the easiest way to do this is to open up a Word document on your computer, a notepad on your phone, or even use a bit of paper and a pen in person. And what you want to do is create 2 columns. Column number 1 will be titled, What Will I Tolerate? Column number 2 will be titled, What I Won't Tolerate. And what you want to put in these columns are all the behaviours, beliefs, opinions, attitudes, all of that stuff that you will and you won't tolerate from other people. So to give you an example, I'm going to show you some of my boundaries, and we're going to focus mainly on the behaviours and attitudes that we won't tolerate, because that is what most of you will be struggling with. Okay? So, here's some boundaries that I have set up. Number 1, I will not tolerate rude or disrespectful behaviour towards me. And that can include passive aggressiveness or direct aggressiveness. Number 2, I will not tolerate someone invading my personal space. Number 3, I will not tolerate someone going through my personal belongings. Number 4, I will not tolerate someone trying to embarrass me. Number 5, I will not tolerate someone trying to use me. Number 6, I will not tolerate people trying to take advantage of me. Number 7, I will not tolerate someone trying to speak to me in a patronizing or disrespectful way. Now, just a quick heads up, these boundaries can vary depending on who you're interacting with, because the boundaries you have with your family might be different to the boundaries you have with your friends, work colleagues, strangers, etc. Personally, I like to keep it more universal because I think it's easier to enforce, but I do get that some of you are in situations where you can't behave a certain way to your family compared to your friends, so, fair play. Me personally though, I just say enforce the boundary no matter who you're speaking to. Once you've created this list of things you will and won't tolerate, next you want to define your boundary leeway. And that simply means how far can someone push that boundary before you respond and draw that boundary up completely. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm at work or I'm out with friends and someone tries to embarrass me. Now that might be a once off and it could be completely innocent, okay? So I might let it slide. However, if it happens again, then that tells me this person is trying to take liberties. And certainly if it happens a third time, you need to draw that boundary. However, my rule of thumb is 2 times max. If someone does something once, you can turn a blind eye, you can be like, okay, they might have made a mistake. But if they do it again, you draw that boundary there and then and put them in their place. Okay, so 2 times max. So the next question is, how do you enforce these boundaries? And there's multiple ways to do this, both from a verbal standpoint and a non-verbal standpoint. There's also an indirect approach and a direct approach. So to begin, let's go straight for the best method that's going to work for you 99% of the time, and that is the direct approach. So if someone crosses your boundary, you're going to directly and verbally say what they've done, and you're going to make them aware that you're not happy with their behavior. So for example, let's say someone invades your personal space. You just turn around and look at them and say, "Excuse me, do you mind? You're in my personal space." The non-verbal direct communication would be direct eye contact. If you do this in combination with the verbal, you will have a much greater effect. Another example is, let's say you're at work and someone's speaking to you in a disrespectful manner. "Excuse me, you're being rude. Do you mind speaking to me properly, please?" And again, have direct eye contact. Have a little stern look on your face. Squint your eyebrows a little bit, and they will unconsciously pick up that you're not someone that they can walk all over. Okay? I do find the phrases "excuse me" and "do you mind" quite powerful when drawing a boundary. This works wonders in the working environment, university, family life, etc. Another phrase you can use is "no," because too many of you are saying yes to requests when you really want to say no. So practice saying no more often. And just a side note, you're not a bad person if you say no, okay? In fact, I think you should say no more often than you say yes, to be quite frank. So what happens when you implement this direct method of drawing a boundary? Well, the person who is trying to push the boundary will unconsciously realize that you're someone that can't be messed with. And what happens after that is quite fascinating, because they will begin to suck up to you and try to be more friendly towards you. They might laugh more at your jokes, or you'll notice in their eye contact that they're trying to get your approval, which is fascinating to see. I know it sounds kind of odd, but give it a try and you'll see what I'm talking about. So let's talk about the indirect method. Now, just a quick warning, as I said before, I prefer the direct method. It's the best approach 99% of the time. But if you find yourself in circumstances or a situation where it could turn ugly or the fallout will be too much, then you might want to implement an indirect method. And I was very cautious about including this part in the video because I don't want people using this as their default form of drawing a boundary. But I'm going to mention it anyway. Okay? So to indirectly draw a boundary, what you want to do is when someone crosses that boundary, pull away all of your attention pull away any of your commitment towards them, pull away any affection you had towards them, and any other privileges that you would normally give them. Okay? They will unconsciously realize that they've done something wrong and will chase to get your approval back. Now, if they don't do that and they continue, then implement the direct method. And if they don't try and make things up to you, then, just continue to withdraw those elements towards them. Okay? From a body language perspective, just be more dismissive, turn away from them more often, look away, have your arms folded, and just go about your day without really paying them much attention. Finally, if someone keeps crossing your boundaries to the point where it's causing you severe emotional and mental distress, it's time to cut them from your life, okay? Because you don't really need to be dealing with people that, one, are not going to respect you, and two, that are going to mentally and emotionally abuse you, okay? I don't care if it's a friend, a family member, or a partner. If they're causing you mental and emotional distress or abuse, you cut that person from your life and you move on to find better people. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I thought I'd mention this last final step just for the sake of this video. And just another side note, because I know some people are going to take this to the extreme, don't just go around and dismiss everyone from your life because they crossed a boundary. Implement the other measures first. But if you find someone continuously doing it and causing you mental and emotional distress, then you might want to implement that final step that I mentioned. Okay? Now, by doing all these steps, people are going to realize that you're someone that can't be messed with. And as I always say, the goal is always to be a cool, respectable person, but someone that can bite back if an unfavorable situation presents itself. One last thing I will mention, that initially when you start drawing boundaries, it's going to feel very uncomfortable because you're probably not used to it, okay? But again, the more you do this, the more you'll get used to drawing those boundaries, and eventually you'll become desensitized to it, and it will become a natural part of who you are, okay? Give it a try. It might take some practice drawing the boundaries and not drawing the boundaries for you to see how it all works in real life, but if you follow this video, you should be fine. Okay, if you enjoyed this episode, give us a like, comment, share, and subscribe, and stay tuned because we've got some excellent content coming out next week. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I will speak to you soon. Take care. Peace.